My name is Tim, this is Sherry. Our daughter, Alyssa, is 2.5 years old. She was born with a brain injury. We didn't know. She had a perfectly normal pregnancy, and then in the 11th hour, Sherry couldn't feel her move, so we had an emergency C-section. Didn't know what was wrong, everything was a suspect. Found out that she had a seizure at 10 hours, and that kind of led us to believe that there was something wrong with her brain, and an MRI showed that she was major damage to her cerebral cortex. So seizures for her have come from a major brain injury. Her seizures, we started on phenobarbital at 10 hours old, and she's still on that to this day. And working with our neurologist, who's Dr. Brown, we've kind of kept her on anticonvulsants, but then we realized that her seizures were refractory. So we tried sort of a parallel medication, which was the ketogenic diet, which she went on about 1 year and 2 months ago.
No, over 1.5 years ago.
Over 1.5 years ago.
Yeah,
And it's been a lot, but so that.
Yeah, I mean, she was having grand mal seizures. She was, having 10 a day, 20 a day, 30, 40, 50, like lasting, 2 minutes up to 10 minutes. So it was like really, really bad, and the medication kept increasing and increasing, and the seizures kept increasing. So it was like, what else can I do for a daughter who was, not even 1 year old yet? So then we decided to try the diet.
Yeah, we decided to try the diet, went into the hospital. At that point, she was she for whatever reason, so...
Don't get too much into
Yeah, we'll tell you more over drinks. But for the, so we were in the hospital for the diet, and one of the biggest things that I think that Jess instilled in us is that it's 3 months. Don't do it for 1 month, don't do it for 2 weeks, don't do it for 2 months. If you're gonna do it for 3 months, because the hospital wasn't the easiest. It was a lot of blood draws, and we're not talking a finger prick. I mean, they need a lot of blood, which can be used for 20 different tests of different levels. So the first month after she was on the diet was actually worse, and we came close to pulling the trigger of stopping, and luckily we didn't. So
after about, it was like around her birthday, I feel like it was about a month later, we started to see a slight decrease. So we said, okay, let's hold on a little bit longer and see if this is going to work. And I mean, so it's been like 20 months now she's been on it, and it's been over 90% reduction in seizures. It's really been a godsend.
And at the same time, we reduced her anticonvulsants by about 90%. So she's on levetiracetam and Keppra, and yeah, that's the same thing, levetiracetam and Keppra. Levetiracetam and phenobarbital, and it's nice and comforting knowing that she's at the baseline of a med that could create some type of side effect, whether it's irritability or drowsiness, which could affect her learning. Our daughter is very developmentally delayed, very, very physically and mentally, but there's still, I mean, she has more smiles and seizures. She has, she can communicate with us in her own little way, and having that diet has been great. I guess maybe you should mention what we do for the diet.
Yeah, so just quickly, she does eat by mouth, but she also has a G-tube. She doesn't get enough liquids through a normal diet, and also the nutrition and the medications, getting the vitamins, getting those meds into her. So we have the G-tube, but she still eats 3 meals a day. The recipes are actually in there. I don't think they probably look appetizing to anyone in the room, but they work for her. We had to experiment a bit with what would work, but we found that what would work best for Alyssa. We didn't know how much she would eat, and she doesn't understand that she needs to finish her meal. Everything she eats is the perfect ratio. Every bite is perfect ratio, so whether she has 1 bite or her entire meal, she's okay.
Because it's mixed together.
Yeah, so it's not like have a bite of egg and then have a bite of fruit. It's like every bite, it's all mixed together. So we found that avocados and some other foods are really great ketogenic foods. And then she does get a formula and some vitamins through her G-tube as well.
I want to just mention 2 things that was unique about their dietary treatment. We were able to use breast milk with her formula, so that was something new.
That was new, yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, we try to really individualize it to make sure to meet, you know, this was really important to Sherry. She was breastfeeding at the time and didn't want to give that up, so she pumped, and we would put the breast milk in with her ketogenic formula, which was, you know, it was really neat.
Yeah, it was a very small amount, but it was something. So
it was really unique. And then I wanted to mention too that with the ketogenic diet, you don't have the side effects like you do with medications, so that's really unique about the diet too. And then also something that was different with them was that it did really take about a month to a month and a half to see results with the diet. Usually it's about 2 weeks, so it was really hard to hang in there, but we did, and that's when we saw the results. So. And it does seem to get better every month too.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we have our ups and downs, but it has progressively gotten better. Like, you know, it's like, oh wow, we're at a good place at 6 months, but then another 6 months, and if you saw how much we chart stuff, you'd like lose your mind. We bring these charts, averages, numbers, we track everything, and it's like, wow, you can really see the average has been dropping like month over month. So it has been really great. And like, you know, the blood testing and stuff at first is hard. You know, you have to take their blood at home and test it. And I was very squeamish around blood. You get over that somehow. Needles I didn't like. Now it's, you know, you just do what you have to do. But, you know, that lessens over time, so we don't have to test her nearly as much. And it really just kind of became part of what we did every day. And it's difficult to kind of get used to it, but you know, now it's just part of our routine, and it works.
My name is Emily Jost. My daughter Brianna is just turned 3. She was diagnosed with epilepsy at the age of 14 months. We pretty much spent about 5 months continuously in the hospital trying various medications. She failed 7 medications before we ended up on the diet. She currently probably has around 75% seizure control and reduction. Usually she has flare-ups and we can attribute it to something. This week she had one where she had 9 seizures in the course of an 8 to 12-hour span where we have no idea what the trigger was. She becomes hypoxic and desats with her seizures, but the diet for her has been the only thing that has given her any seizure control whatsoever. She's on a 3.5 to 1 ratio and has about 1,060 calories these days. She really isn't fussy about what she eats, so that does make it easier. She's really also not interested in food, which in a sense makes it easier, but sometimes harder to feed her. She is developmentally delayed. She did start to walk late, just probably last spring, just over age 2. She started to talk. She says hi, some other words on occasion, but nothing really consistently. She started preschool, which may contribute to her little seizure flare-ups, who knows. Too many kids. German. Overall, I mean, the diet's been the only thing that has helped her.
Hi, I'm Bethany Gilpin. My son Noah, I took notes because it was actually 4 years ago, coming up on 4 years ago when I first met Jessica. But it was actually Memorial Day weekend, and my son was 4, he had just turned 4, and my daughter said, look at the funny thing Noah's doing. And if you guys know Noah, he does a lot of funny things. But this was his first seizure. He started with grand mal. He had about one a day for several days in a row, which was, you know, atypical for epilepsy development. And about 2 weeks later, he started having absence seizures, a couple at a time at first, and then a couple weeks later, they started clustering, and then he started having drop seizures. So he was having multiple seizure types within a short period of time. In about 6 weeks, by the time 4th of July came around, he was in non-convulsive status, which is basically having non-convulsive seizures all the time, all day long. We were admitted at that point for a more aggressive treatment, since this previously there was nothing, everything was normal too. His MRI and CAT scan, everything was normal. Even his EEG at first was normal, and then it became horrible. And we did get a 48-hour reprieve with high-dose Valium at one point, oral Valium, but by that point we were on our med number 4, and meds were just not working. He started losing speech, coordination, strength, even bladder and bowel control. He was regressing very quickly. That's when we met Jessica. So he was diagnosed at that point with Deuce syndrome, which was one of the diagnoses that Jessica mentioned, which was really good for the diet. So we initiated at that point. We were, I think, on med number 6 by that point. He was on 5 when we started keto, and we started under duress. We did not plan for keto. We were already hospitalized. We said, why not? Let's give it a try. And he had lost 7 pounds at this point in a short period of time because he was seizing all the time. He was in seizure activity about 50% of awake time at this juncture. So we we tried keto for the first couple of days, and he just wasn't eating keto or non-keto, whatever. We had to drop an NG tube and feed him by tube at first. And right around that point, we got a new attending that really wanted to didn't think we did a good Depakote trial. We needed to try a Depakote one more time, right at the same time. So we said, okay, we'll try it one more time. And it was an epic fail of Depakote. He stopped speech altogether. He was completely catatonic. We couldn't tell if he was awake or asleep unless we looked at his EEG. It was an epic fail. And so we pulled the plug after about 36 hours of IV Depakote. And then at that point, he had some skin integrity issues because of he had been in the hospital so long on the leads. So we took the EEG off for just a couple days. He was still being tube fed ketogenic diet. And then 2 days later, we put the leads back on, and the attendings could not believe, and nobody who looked at Noah's EEG before couldn't believe it was his EEG. It wasn't clean, but he was clinically seizure-free at that point. And so it took us about a week to get everything stabilized before we were discharged. We were discharged on the NG tube initially, and on supplements, and on 2 medications still. It was amazing. About a month later, we discharged the NG tube, and we got him just onto an oral diet. By this point, he was 4, so he was very picky. And we did have 1 breakthrough seizure due to a med wean, but after that, we weaned meds very slowly. It took about 18 months before we could get rid of all meds, and then in September of 2011, we weaned the ketogenic diet from him. And he's now 7. He's, depending on the time, probably playing basketball right now. And he is diet-free, med-free, and seizure-free. And the one thing I just want to encourage you guys is that when I first met Jessica, I did not want to try the diet. I did not want the diet at all. My husband wanted the diet, like, of course. I knew the work would follow me, but I didn't want the diet at all. I don't know if I think part of the time I didn't want to admit he was that fat off. I think I was still in a denial that that every other thing hadn't worked, that I just didn't want to admit that. I think, secondly, I had 3 other children. I still do. Our kids at the time were 7, 8, and 2, and I just didn't know how that would work. How was I going to feed one kid keto? What was I going to do with the others? And Noah was very opinionated about what he ate. He was definitely challenging. And then I also had this issue of not wanting to force feed my child, and I think it was really an issue for me, an emotional issue that I just had to get over, because I realized that if your child has an ear infection, and you get them to take that medicine, like one way or another, you figure it out. And so when I realized that his diet was his medicine, then I relaxed with that. So I just want to encourage you guys, and anybody who's considering that, like, I would be happy to talk to anybody who's especially has challenges with how to ensure compliance, and because we had that, Noah was very opinionated about what he ate even before epilepsy. So, and there's a lot of support out there. Also, I had support locally. I had support nationwide, and it's amazing to see a lot of amazing stories from friends that I have all over the country that we've met online in that regard. So And I think, Jessica, I'm sorry for holding my hand through the whole thing.
So, hi, I'm Jennifer Cardillo. My daughter Daphne is 6 years old, and actually she probably would have been in here to say hi, except she's at her swimming lesson right now. So, I first met Jessica when Daphne was age 5. At that point, Daphne had had seizures since she was 4 months old. She started off with her first seizure was 20 minutes long. The second seizure was an hour long. The third seizure, I believe, was an hour and a half long. We couldn't get them to stop. She was like the Energizer bunny. It just kept going and going and going. And these were tonic-clonic. So when we first started working with our first neurologist, he actually missed the fact that she was partial. Quite frankly, considering how quickly her seizures onset, it would have been easy to make that mistake. So we went through several medications, very similar to the experience here, in terms of trying to stop her seizures. When we finally switched neurologists and finally realized that actually she had partials first, we did get some seizure control. But it took a few medications, including one of the second worst experiences we had with her epilepsy, where we put her on trileptal and she had a full body rash. Medicine did work great, it stopped the seizures, but she would have died from the rash. So, we finally had her on a combination of 2 anticonvulsants, which was Depakine, which she's still on, and Topamax. We've had a lot of side effects from the Topamax. The Topamax was working for a while to stop the tonic-clonics, and then the tonic-clonics came back, so we knew that medication was failing. She was having behavioral problems from having to take so much medication, and she was having trouble in school. She was absolutely miserable. So we met with Bill Brown, who's Daphne's neurologist, and said, look, what can we do? And we were given 3 options. The first option was to try another medication. We were given the options of Lamictal or Felbamate, which have their own lovely set of side effects that they can have. We were given the option of VNS, and the third was the diet. And Dr. Brown asked us to take a little bit of time to research it, so we weren't in a situation where we had to do it immediately. So we met with Jessica. I think it was July-August time frame before we implemented the diet. We did talk to one of the local representatives for VNS, may possibly have talked to Mike too, can't remember, so it's been a little bit, and actually had really positive conversations about the VNS. My husband was very hip on VNS, I was very hip on the diet. We finally hit a situation in November. We decided we had had enough, and we called Jessica and decided to implement the diet. Jessica did suggest that maybe we wait until after Thanksgiving, but we were done, I tell you. We were so frustrated at that point that we implemented Thanksgiving week, and my family actually came up to help us implement the diet, which was absolutely great, and they're still mailing us stuff, and food and that kind of thing to help out with the diet. So let's talk about how hard it was, because the first month was absolutely terrible. For anyone who knows my daughter, she is spirited, despite the epilepsy, absolutely addicted to carbohydrates. True Italian child. There's not a piece of pasta that she would not eat. Absolutely loves chocolate. So addicted to chicken nuggets. When Jessica met her, her diet was 65% carbohydrates. And we weren't sure we were going to be able to convert her. So of course the first question to Jessica was, could she still have chocolate on any of the diet options that we put in front of us? The one that she still could was either modified Atkins or the low glycemic index treatment. And we ultimately decided, considering that we were dealing with an older child and one who was a little bit more spirited, that we would try the low glycemic index treatment. So Thanksgiving week we start. We actually did get through the first week with a lot of help and support and phone calls and emails to Jessica and Bill Brown. Jessica had really done a fantastic job of designing recipes that would still seem like maybe there were carbohydrates in them. For example, chicken tenders. We didn't realize though that Daphne didn't like coconut flour, so that was kind of an epic fail on that one. But we did try really hard. But there were luckily a lot of other things that she liked, and she herself made the decision that she didn't want to have these seizures anymore. She wanted this to succeed. It was her, I'll be very honest with you, she wouldn't still be on the diet if it wasn't for her channeling that spirited energy that she has to get rid of the epilepsy, because she wanted to be with her friends and wanted to be like her peers. So, and she's pretty much achieved that. We're at 90% seizure free on the low glycemic index diet. The remaining 10% would still be in what I would call the exciting category, where we still have the Energizer Bunny seizures that don't stop. So, and we still do have some of her absent seizures. And that we're working on with Jessica and Bill Brown to figure out what we can do about that last 10%. And that's still an ongoing trial and error process. But I would say overall, it was probably the best thing that we ever did. And Daphne herself, which we never, I don't know, totally considered in the entire conversation, that it had to be our child supporting this too. And she went along with it also. She goes around and talks to her friends about what she can eat and what she can't. She explains it to her teachers, the school nurse, everything along those lines. So she's a big advocate of what she's done to control her epilepsy, and I'm really proud of her, because we couldn't have done it without her, and she couldn't have done it with all the help and support. Well, it was a good experience.
How old is she?
She's 6 now.
Wow.
So, and she's really active. So she, like I said, she's swimming today. She's been doing ice skating, but she's been having a little bit of a problem with it. She has some motor skill issues, so sometimes that's been a little difficult, but she's very stubborn. She wants to do it. So she decided to go back to Hasbro Physical Therapy so they could fix some of her motor skills so she could ice skate.